Welcome to the London Free Press Podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Gilbert. If you've had anything to do with the housing market in recent years, you will know how difficult it is for young people to afford to buy a home. But a new study based on numbers from the 2021 census show many young people are getting help from the bank of mom and dad when it comes to purchasing their first house. Today, I'm talking with London Free Press reporter Jonathan Juha about the trend. Hi, Jonathan. How are you?
Good. Glad to be here.
Good. We're glad to have you back. I know you were away for a little while and now you're back with the Free Press. So we're glad to have you on the podcast again.
I'm definitely excited to be back too.
Yeah. Well, this seems obvious, but I just kind of want to get the lay of the land here. But why is it so difficult for people to enter the housing market? I mean, we know housing prices are high, interest rates are high. I guess it's a combination of everything. But can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, and like we have been seeing for the past few years, we're dealing with an affordability crisis. As you mentioned, prices in London have been growing over the past few years. Obviously, since the Bank of Canada started increasing interest rates, that price has been going down. But the increase in the interest rates has not meant an increase in affordability. If anything, more people are having a harder time to get approved for mortgages. So younger people are having to rely, it seems, a little bit more on their parents as a way to actually get their foot in the market. That can take many different forms, support for the down payment, or in the case of this study specifically, co-owning the property, meaning, the parents and the child are both in the mortgage agreement. So it's a reflection of the situation that we're in and how difficult it is for a sector of the population, especially young adults now, to enter the home ownership market.
Sure. So how many homes are co-owned by parents and children? Do we have stats on that?
Yeah, so for London, the statistic is around 16%. That's just slightly below the Canadian average of 17%. So pretty much one in six homes locally, it's co-owned by the parents and the young adults born in the 1990s. Um, what we really have to remember, though, is that these numbers do not really capture that moment in time that happened after the pandemic, when we saw the really big growth in prices and interest rates had not risen at that point. So some of the values for the homes may not be reflective of the reality that we are now. So that's sort of like a snapshot in time. And the other thing is that there's not a comparison, like the study didn't look at other peers in times or other census data. It's just sort of like a snapshot for this time. But we have been hearing anecdotally about this trend of parents having to step in to support their children, allowing them to get into the market. This is sort of like the most recent data to back that up that we can see specifically for London.
And these are stats from 2021. And do we know how many parents have given gifts to their children to help purchase the home? Maybe they're not co-signers, but they've given money. Do we know have stats on that?
So while doing research for the story, I also came across a study by CIBC showing as well that the percentage of parents who are actually giving that financial gift, presumably for down payments, has also gone up. The figure used to be around 20% in 2015. So by 2021, that number was approaching 30%. And again, at that point in time, prices had already been growing and all of that, but we hadn't reached the peak of the market, which was around February, March of 2022. Here in London, average home prices reach a price of $825,000. Just yesterday, numbers came out for what the average price here was in May. That's down to $660,000. So
Hmm.
that's a significant drop. But again, the interest rate is still making it difficult for young adults to get approved. Talking to one of the brokers for the story, he was also mentioning that, a lot of young adults, they try to make it on their own, they try to apply, but then they realize that, what they're being approved for doesn't really cover the cost of the property they want, or they're not even getting approved at all. So definitely they're turning to their parents for some support.
Do you find in talking with the brokers, are some young people just getting discouraged and giving up on the dream of owning a home at all?
Well, we have seen also reports and studies showing that an increasing number of Canadians feel that home ownership is out of their reach.
Mhm.
Again, obviously, the pace of growth that we experienced during the pandemic time, when interest rates were like near zero, obviously wages were not keeping up in any way. And it was, it's like that line of how much you need to save, which is for that down payment just going further and further away from people. So there's
Yeah.
definitely still a sense of doom for a lot of people, and not really being hopeful that they'll be able to ever enter into the market.
Sure. I guess I shouldn't say young people. I mean, it could be new Canadians as well. I mean, that the you're right, the bar is just going farther away.
And not even young Canadian, not even young or new, but even older generations as well. Even people who are making a good living are still having a hard time because, again, because of the interest rates being so high, that the income required to get approved for a property now is also getting bigger. They're facing other challenges, so it's not a situation that is affecting a specific demographic. It's really a problem that is affecting people throughout the society.
Is this the first time StatsCan has measured, co-ownership of housing?
As far as I know, yes. Like I mentioned, they didn't have a comparative study to compare to see if the trend, if the numbers have gone up or anything like that. They were just looking at the situation as of the data that they were able to collect from the 2021 census. So it's sort of like the most recent and more accurate picture that we can get to this point. But again, we still have to add that caveat of the market hadn't picked yet, and some of the conditions hadn't worsened. So um, the issue of affordability has gotten worse even since 2021.
Mhm.
And the study also reflects how, those a rate of co-ownership go higher the closer you get to some of the larger markets, like in Ontario, obviously closer to Toronto, and the GTA communities around there are seeing higher and higher rates of co-ownership, highlighting again, giving you that idea that obviously as affordability becomes more difficult for young people, the need for support from their parents is only growing.
Absolutely, yeah. Um, Talk about parental housing wealth because you mentioned that in your story. What does that mean and how is that affecting the situation?
So the other element that the study is highlighting is the fact that what if you receive support from your parents, the value of your home also tends to be higher than if you are getting it on your own. So it shows the impact that it not only has on other generations being able to get into the market, but actually their ability to accumulate and create wealth for themselves also increases when they have that support. Because again, having that support from parents can mean that you have a larger down payment, maybe being a consigner, you can qualify for a higher home. So the values of the home also tend to be higher for those people who have the advantage of being able to be supported by their parents versus those who don't. So it creates also conversation about equity in the community and equality of opportunity and
Mhm.
when it comes to creating wealth as well.
What about multi-generational living? Just anecdotally, I think a lot of us have seen that that's happening more often now. You've got several generations or maybe two generations living in one house. Is that kind of situation becoming more common?
So the study doesn't have figures specific for London, but when looking, for example, in Ontario as a whole, it shows that about a third of all co-owned properties, parents are living with their children. I mean, that's the only property in which they have a mortgage or they own. So
Okay.
it does give you the idea to suggest that some of the arrangement is not only to support their parents, but you're also seeing families, coming together to be able to enter into the market. And again, that's just yet another example of how the affordability picture comes into play when making these decisions. The report also highlights how these type of arrangements seem to be more common with young, like immigrant families. So again, not having all the means to perhaps for each member of the family to buy their own property, they're coming to these arrangements to find a way to get into the market.
And they're buying larger properties, obviously, to I'm assuming for to have all that the room. Does that make a difference in the market when you've got, a group of people buying more expensive homes? Is that pushing prices up? Do we know?
The study itself doesn't get into all those specific. It's just looking specifically at how, like, the percentage of that co-ownership rate.
Mhm.
But what you're seeing and hearing anecdotally as well that is happening is, a lot of transformation to the properties, maybe turning the basement into a separate unit as a
Mhm.
way to make those arrangements happen. But at the end of the day, I think it would generate more competition if you had multiple families. Like, I mean, if you don't have this type of arrangement, then potentially you could have two different offers or two additional people looking for properties, right? So that increases the demand. But when they are coming together, there are actually, there's fewer people actually bidding on different properties.
That's true. Yeah. So we had an interest rate hike or interest rate, sorry, cut recently this week. And is that going to help at all? I mean, what needs to happen for young people or people in general to be able to afford their first home?
So yeah, so the Bank of Canada today announced that they were cutting the interest rate for the first time since the middle of last year. It just went from 5% to 4.75. So it's a very small cut, one that may generate some consumer confidence and make people feel better about the chances that things are going to be going down. But it doesn't really, like, I mean, in terms of money itself, on how much a person is going to have to pay for the mortgage or the chances of qualify, it doesn't really make much of a difference right now. You would need to see analysts say sustained cuts and a number of cuts before a broader spectrum of the population that can actually jump back into the market. But it's definitely a sign that can give confidence to that sector who perhaps can afford to enter the market right now. And again, talking to some of the agents here in London, they were mentioning, if you can afford to enter now, it may be a good time because you are comparably getting a cheaper price. And every time the Bank of Canada makes a cut, it's a win for you because you're going to see your payment decrease, or more of the money that you're paying will go towards the actual loan itself. So
Yeah.
so it's a step in the right direction. Everything has been going up now in prices, and affordability is top of mind for many Canadians and Londoners as well. So it's a step in the right direction for that. But before we see some substantial effects, especially in the housing market, it'll probably take a few more cuts and a few more months.
And then when that happens, the price of the houses will probably go up because there's more demand, right? So
That's one of the fears as well, that to see how the market is going to react, because again, bringing the interest rates down could generate again a lot of demand. I mean, it's not like demand has gone away. It's just that a lot of people have not been able, especially first time home buyers, to enter into the market. So the idea is that yes, once the interest rates start to go down, then you can see a lot of people perhaps jumping into the market, and then maybe we'll have to see how the market reacts and it's able to absorb that demand. But it could potentially lead again to prices going up, and again the affordability picture would get murky again.
yeah, yeah. Okay, well, thank you, Jonathan, for joining us today. I know you're going to have more on this because this is your sector that you follow at lfpress.com. So thanks for today.
No, thank you for having me.